welcome to UC Today with me, David Dungay. I have with me today Paul Clark, SVP of Poly. Welcome to the show, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, David. It's great to be here and nice to spend some time with you again. In a while.
So today, Paul, we're going to be talking about some of the niche verticals that Poly operates in and some of the opportunities that surrounds those vertical markets. But before we get into that, for those of our audience that might not be familiar with yourself and Poly, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction?
Yeah. So I run Poly within EMEA. For those of people who don't know about Poly, you may well have known the names Polycom or Plantronics. And 3 years ago, those two companies came together. We formed Poly, and we're a leader in the collaboration space from personal communications with headsets to webcams, all the way through to group communication with video systems people may be familiar with in their offices, when they were in their offices, or perhaps when they go back, and everything in between.
Excellent. So, verticalized market. We're going to focus on four key markets at the moment. These are four key markets for Poly as well. So we've got financial services, we've got healthcare, we've got education, and we've got government. I want to kick off though with the financial services space.
Mhm.
Before we get into the nitty gritty, give us a bit of a background. Over the last year or two, how has this sector really been impacted by things like the pandemic and some of the tech changes that have been going on?
Well, like all the verticals, I guess we're going to talk about, and many, many more, they've been enormously impacted. The one thing I think we should say about the financial market, financial services sector is that had already gone significantly down the path of digital transformation. I mean, these are commercial enterprises that are looking at, efficiencies, better ways of servicing their customers. So they had already started to invest heavily in new technologies for collaboration. They'd set up customer service operations, think about telephone-based banking, back in the 1990s for those people who are old enough. So you can see an organizational type that is very adept at embracing new technologies. But of course, with COVID hitting us, everything changed and everything went on to effectively a warp speed of transformation. So very dynamic markets. And I want to think of, I'm of a generation many years ago where I would go to the bank to get money out from a counter. I haven't done that for quite some time. But when COVID hit, there was an enormous change in all of our behaviors with banks. I mean, the visiting of bank branches dropped almost 50%. It was incredible. In fact, many of us couldn't get to banks for a period of the COVID. Online banking jumped 30%. Mobile banking, using mobile phones to do banking transactions, increased by 80%. So absolutely incredible. And of course, many of us had made the transition to telephone-based banking, and there was an enormous surge through the COVID period in calls on the resource that these financial services had put into tele-based banking, to the point where the demand had gone up by that 50%, and poor agents having to handle all our calls. It was a dramatic time for the financial services for sure.
Wow. Well, I mean that surprises me with the rise of all these other inroads into the banking system via the apps on the
Mm.
mobile and the collaboration tools and whatnot. That those that call quality is still that's still needed. Can you talk to us a little bit about why is quality still important today in the banking system,
Well,
and how is Poly helping with that?
it's a great question. Because you think, of course, well, we're all doing things self-serving using our apps, so we don't need those agents to help us anymore. But what's actually happening is we're doing the easy stuff on the apps, the regular stuff, the things we're familiar with, the things that we know what to do. However, the rate of increase of that has been dramatic. And what it means is that when you hit something that you can't do, you're reaching out to a human, because a human will help you. So you're calling through to those agents. What it means for the poor agents is they're getting calls, so the call rate's gone up. They're now having to work from home, which was a phenomena all of us experienced through COVID. But when they're getting people calling through into them, those people have already exhausted, if you like, the regular ways of servicing their needs. So there's a level of frustration that the callers have built up that is about, why am I having to now call you? I just can't, I just want to get something done. So the poor agents having to deal with, what are generally more complex issues, and they're having to deal them with people who are typically a little bit more stressed because they haven't been able to self-serve themselves because it is complex what they're doing. So the agents are put in quite a difficult position, and they have to deliver a good quality service because they're now front of house for those financial services. What we know is when it's a telephone-based call like that, it's voice to voice, and good, clear communication avoids the need for, sorry, can you say that again? Sorry, I can't quite hear you, which is going to do nothing more than frustrate the caller and make the conversation, pretty uncomfortable all round. So good quality audio is really a requirement in these highly stressed environments. Of course, as well, with the agents now working at home, they're in environments where it may not be as managed as it perhaps would have been when they were in the office. So they want all the extraneous noise around them not to be transmitted down into the caller. And we all know that when we speak to, whoever the financial service provider is that we're on the phone to at that time, we don't want to think that we're dealing with somebody sitting in the home. We may know it's happening, but we don't want to think about it. We want to deal with somebody we think is in a professional environment. And that audio clarity, that audio perfection that comes from using Poly products enables you to represent your company in the best possible light. So that's why audio quality is so much more important perhaps than it would have been in the
Yeah.
past.
Okay. So, person to person communication, again, very, very important in the healthcare industry. Typically, an in person type of scenario where, we're going into our GP surgeries and whatnot. But video based healthcare, we've been hearing lots about this on the periphery for a few years now, but has it arrived? Are we there yet with video based healthcare?
I think people would be surprised at just how widespread video-based consultations now are. And it was accelerated through the COVID changes. It was already happening, just making consultants more accessible or specialists more accessible in hospitals, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happened, at an accelerated pace through COVID is access to your GP using video technology has risen dramatically. So to the point now where almost all NHS GP surgeries offer video consultation services, and that may surprise many people. In the move into COVID, there was a very rapid rise in video consultations. It was about 78 times the rate it had been 2 months before at the start. So if you looked at February to April of last year, there's a huge jump in video consultations because we still needed to see our medical specialists, but we couldn't get there. And what other techniques? Of course, you can telephone, and we've all done that. And that's not quite as good as seeing, because seeing is believing, as it were. And so doctor surgery rapidly moved to enabling the use of video technology. We as consumers actually, and again, when we think about it, it's not so surprising, are very comfortable using video. We do it with, our consumer, whether we use Skype or FaceTime or, Messenger or whatever the app, WhatsApp, whatever the app is, we all have a comfort with using video. So it was a short leap, both in terms of our willingness to do so, but also the technology's use to have doctor surgeries. And now it's relatively common, probably about between 13% and 17% of consultations now are video-based, so-called telehealth services. And that market is set to rise. So is it here? Yes, it's here. Is it mainstream? Absolutely, it's mainstream. But it's at that level of around the 15% that I was saying, plus or minus. we're going to see very rapid growth of telehealth services. The global market for telehealth services at the moment is about $62 billion. For the next 5 years, that's due to compound growth about 27% each year. So you're going to see much, much more. And if you've used any of those services, and I have, it's pretty compelling. It saves you a lot of time. You get access to a GP much quicker than you normally would. And so what's not to like if you're getting what you want, which is access and diagnosis and treatment much faster than you'd otherwise get it.
Excellent. Well, look, let's talk about how Poly are bringing that to life. What a strange use of words. But what are the important
Yeah.
considerations around video in healthcare right now?
So in the GP environment, it's making sure that the GP, for example, is the person that you're seeing. You're not seeing all the extraneous background. You're not seeing or hearing, excuse me, all the extraneous noise. So we introduced some products, some personal video products last year, the Studio P series, a very good video quality webcam, but also the P15, which is a video bar. So it's an all-in-one device that fits on the GP standard monitor. It's USB connected, and you can use with whichever application you're using, whichever one's your flavor of the day, and you can connect in with outstanding audio, with phenomenal video, and you can give an intimacy of support, an intimacy of service to people typically in a vulnerable state, making them feel that it's almost like being there. And that's what we want to achieve.
Yeah. Excellent. So, I mean, obviously, a lot of growth in video-based healthcare consultations. Another
Mm-hmm.
vertical we saw a lot of growth in was the education sector. Now, I'm sure all parents watching this today can attest to the difficulties of home learning, but it was an absolutely seismic shift from the education establishments around the world, really. But tell me, how much of that remote learning has stuck, and what are you expecting to see throughout the rest of this year and into next year in terms of that remote hybrid education style?
So hybrid learning is here to stay. It's here to stay because what we saw with the pandemic was that we need to be ready to respond to something like COVID, and COVID's not going away. We're going to see waves of COVID, whatever the variant is that we get to this winter and beyond. What's become clear, not just to the education sector, but to society as a whole, is that we need to have a more agile approach to education. So absolutely what happened was schools closed, children were at home. They were sort of on their own to start with, but progressively the education sector rose to the challenge, and we ended up with, first of all, it was all home learning. Then we recognized we need people back in schools, and they came back to it, but not everyone could go back. But we want to be inclusive, so you ended up with the educational equivalent of hybrid working. And so that type of environment we have to have built into the core of our education sector. And I'm a non-executive director and trustee of a local multi-academy trust with 9 schools. We're thinking about these things. How do we make sure that our academy trust is able to manage the next waves of COVID? One of the things that happened was that we learned that actually there's new forms of learning we need to be building into the education environment, so-called flipped learning. Flipped learning is kind of interesting because it's no longer about turning up to the classroom and hearing the teacher talk, 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 and then go home and remember what he said or she said. Now it's moving to flipped learning is about pre-reading, if you like, pre-homework, learning your subject. Anyone who's done, tertiary education, whether it be business schools or whether it be colleges or university, you know this stuff. You have to go and study it yourself, and then you go into tutorials. Think about the education environment as being much more like tutorials, where when you go into the classroom or you engage with the classroom, it's a much more interactive experience. We can help manage that. We can help facilitate that by bringing video into the classroom. So it doesn't matter so much whether you're physically there, more that you're connected into that environment and you can participate in it. And we're seeing this already. I've got examples from Poly where, we have a university in Denmark where they have 3 different sites and they've essentially set up hybrid education. And we think, okay, that's just for universities. Not so. In the Netherlands, there is a schooling, a trust of 3 schools where the demographics of the schools have changed to the point where it makes no longer economic sense to offer a subject, say it's French, independently in those 3 schools. But if you were to take the pupils from these 3 schools, you'd have enough to justify French education. And so what the academies there have done is they've come together and they've set up hybrid networked classrooms where there will be a teacher in one of the schools actually teaching not just in that classroom, but in 2 other schools in IT-enabled classrooms there. And that's been enabled with Poly video technology. So the whole move towards, this new hybrid education is opening up thinking about not just about the COVID and how do we respond to that or whatever follows it, but also how can we get better utilization of the skills that we have and how can we make education more accessible to a wider variety of pupils or scholars in the education sector. So it's really, really exciting. And we saw enormous growth in education through COVID, and we're seeing enormous pent-up demand in education as we look at what does the next academic year and beyond hold.
Wow, I mean that is a fundamental shift in just thinking about education, and there's a lot of
It is.
parallels you can draw between that and the business world, particularly around the agile based working we're seeing,
Right.
a goal based approach rather than a time in the chair sort of approach. It's really great to see.
Very, very stimulating. Well, the thing we find is you know, I don't like to think of myself as older generation, but in comparison to my children, they're all through schooling now. I certainly am, and in comparison to the people who are going through the schools today, we definitely are. They embrace technology like it's part of their lives because it is part of their lives. It's not something that is separate. And once we realize that, we recognize that this hybrid type of education, the embracing of video as part of the educational experience, is something that they take to very, very readily. So huge, huge opportunities in education.
Excellent. So, I mean, that engagement piece in education, clearly we're not moving to a system where we're seeing children in on Zoom calls for 8 hours a day, which is a good thing, I think. But how are you creating that engagement when they are in live scenarios or otherwise? Is that an important factor still?
So to be clear, whether you're sitting on your own or whether you're sitting in the classroom, it's absolutely key in an educational environment that you're engaged. Because if you're not engaged, all that's happening is time is passed. So what we try to do is we try to make the experience from a technological point of view as seamless and immersive as it can be. So we spend a lot of time within Poly looking at what can we do within our products to make sure that the experience is as real as it could be if you were actually physically present. So things like when you have a video, what we typically do, of course, is that we'll watch the person who's speaking. So we track in our video products to the speaker and we can move between 2 speakers pretty seamlessly so that, again, rather like the movement of a head, it's almost like being in that. And in terms of engagement, that's what we're trying to do with our video-based products. So if you look at the most recent studio range of products from Poly, they're doing that with speaker tracking in it. The other thing that we've been doing is to try and democratize video, making it more accessible to others, is we've introduced video bars that are very easy to use. You can use, just connect them into your PC, USB connected, but you get the same outstanding audio, the same outstanding video that you get from our top of the range products. Again, democratizing video engagement there at that point is all down to how interesting the teacher's making the subject. That's not a lot we can do much with, in fact.
Excellent. Okay. Well, another sector that also requires pretty high levels of engagement, the legal system. In the UK here, we saw a huge backlog in cases in our legal system. Video has helped clear some of that. But I know, Polly, you've got quite an interesting case study with in the Czech Republic with the Ministry of Justice over there. How did you help them with their challenges, and were their challenges similar to some of the things we're seeing over here?
Do you know what's really interesting? Yes, we've helped the in the Czech Republic with the Ministry of Justice there, and what we've done is essentially built an end-to-end system working with our partner in that country, because there is a significant element of integration that has to happen there, to build a solution that really it's essentially a private network. Because we're dealing with the legal system, but it's incredible when I look around Europe, actually broader than Europe, Middle East and Africa, because I happen to look after that area as well. I see significant consistency in the desire to support the machineries of government, in particular the wheels of justice. So ministries of justice in many, many countries have moved to video enablement, like the Czech Republic, but also like the United Kingdom with our MOJ, where they have looked to facilitate that. I talked about the wheels of justice, facilitate the process, the legal process with pre-trial hearings, with witnesses, with prosecution, with defendants, bringing them all virtually together to enable justice to be done, but also to be seen to be done. And it's incredible. So I can't actually think of any major country in Europe where there hasn't been a significant uptake of video in the legal system, even right down into in police stations, video enabling rooms in there, so that you can, when you cannot travel. Think again about COVID. How does the process of law proceed if you can't actually give your evidence, or you can't be cross-examined on something you say? So video enablement becomes key to that process, and we have been at the core of that. Say with the Czech Republic, similarly in Denmark, I say most countries across Europe, and close in the United Kingdom where we work with a partner, we've supplied the video equipment to enable that ongoing justice system.
Yeah.
So very, very, it's also not just in justice as we normally think about it for that prosecution. We also see in other parts of government, we see video being embraced in the Department for Works and Pensions. The DWP embraced video for accessibility to enable if you're stuck at home, but you need to access services for DWP. If you're hard of hearing and you rely on sign language, video enabled sign language and enabled access. So you see that. We also can see in the system for child support and benefit tribunals a look to move to introducing the video technology again for accessibility. So video appearing in lots and lots of places where historically people may not have thought it was, so it's appropriate.
Yeah, and clearly, I mean that sector is absolutely humongous space government in general. But I mean, lots of different types of people will interact with that space as well. Creating inclusive environments, obviously very important. What are the key sort of considerations around creating these all-inclusive environments for people of all types?
Yeah. First of all, accessibility is really, really important. So having a range of products. I mean, we're talking here about, if we use the justice system, there's a very, very diverse range of environments you might go to have the technology available to you. We talked about police, the police stations. We talked about the courtroom systems. I mentioned about DWP. The idea here is that anyone should be able to go and readily use the technology. So from a Poly's perspective, making devices easy to use is absolutely key. Gone are the days where we would sit and watch a video ISDN link up spiraling in the bottom of our screens. Now it's rather like we do when we use a Zoom call or we use a Teams call. It's a one button press. You're connected to the other party or into the room, and then the technology steps back and you can focus on the interaction. And that's what we want to make happen. We do not want technology at Poly to be seen as something that stands on its own. It should be there to facilitate whatever it is that you wish to do. The other thing that we've been doing is we've been expanding the range of our products. I did talk earlier on, about the democratization of video. That wasn't a comment for education or any one sector. It's a comment across the board is you as an individual should be able to go and access, for you, the right device, and whether it be a personal video device as a webcam or a video bar. It could be personal or a video bar in a room or a video bar that integrates with whatever the technology system is used. That should be, invisible to the person. They should be able to just go in and focus on the use. Now, the other thing that we know is that if you're an IT leader in this space, think of everyone now at home, you're going to have concerns about what's being connected to my network.
Mm-hmm.
Single biggest issue at the moment for IT leaders is security. With people working from home, we're through the immediate fears of COVID, and we're now into a point of elegance. How do we make the world a better place? And security is an area where many IT managers are concerned for their companies. Is the right level of control and monitoring in place to ensure that they're not opening up back holes into their organizations? The great news is at Poly, we have a Poly Lens, which is a management layer as a service that allows IT managers to see what devices are being connected. Is it the audio device, the video devices? What are those video devices? What are the software revisions that are on those video devices? Is it the latest version that I want? Is it configured in the right way so that I can ensure that the users that come on and use the equipment on my enterprise or my entity are getting the right experience I want it to have? And PolyLens is enabling that. So we're getting great plaudits from IT leaders for having thought of that as an issue, because it is a big concern to them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a lot of channel partners might be watching this today, thinking, "Oh, I'm not really a specialist in any one of those verticals, or maybe some and not the others." I mean, do you really have to be a specialist to succeed in one of the four verticals that we've spoken about today?
So the answer is no and yes. Okay. It's no because you don't, because with the democratization of video, we've made video devices so much easier now to install and to use. But the answer is yes as well, because some clients want more than plug and play. They want a complete solution, which is a system, which is end to end, which has management overlay, which has ongoing service and support on it. Essentially, they're looking potentially for a managed service. That is also possible. So the challenge for the channels out there is, where do you want to play in the opportunities there? It's as big or as small as you want to make it, but it's certainly there and it's open to everyone. Everyone has a chance to play and everyone has a chance to make profit, servicing the needs of their customers in markets that are incredibly dynamic and set to grow over the next 5 years.
Yeah. Well, let's before we leave our viewers today, let's maybe talk about some areas outside of these four verticals that we've spoken about today. Are you seeing opportunity everywhere? Where are you seeing that opportunity outside of these four verticals?
Honestly, David, it's an embarrassment of riches because every single person who will be watching you and I talk will have changed the way that they manage their business or they go about their day-to-day lives over the last 12 or 18 months. And they'll have changed it significantly, and that'll have opened new opportunities. So answer to your question quite bluntly is, we're seeing opportunity everywhere. We're seeing video opportunity everywhere. We're seeing audio headset opportunity everywhere. So many people nowadays are wearing headsets and weren't wearing them before. Many of the purchases were distressed purchases, so it was whatever was available because there was a shortage of headset devices last year. Now we're back in full stock, and there's a lot of exciting technology and products that we have here in Poly. So there's enormous opportunity to upgrade people in audio, enormous opportunity to upgrade people in video, and it's all driven by, in answer to your question, a sea change in the way that we're going to collaborate. Dispersed collaboration was a story I used to talk about for the last 10 years. And in all truth, 10 to 15% of people and companies that I spoke to embraced it, and the rest said, that's great, but that's not really for us. We do things in a particular way. Now it's kind of the other way around. It's 10 or 15% say, that's not for us. Everyone else is saying, how can you help me? So whatever sector you're in, there are opportunities for the new ways that we're going to be working.
Exciting times. Right. I think that's a
It
great
is.
place to end today's discussion. Paul, thank you so much for joining me.
David, nice to speak to you again. Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching. You've been watching me, David Dungay, on UC Today. If you like today's discussion, please give us a like and a share on social media. It's greatly appreciated. That's it from me. I'll see you next time.